There's never been a better time to have Sirius XM. With over 140 channels in your vehicle, your all-access trial includes more than ever before to enjoy online, on your phone, or at home. Create your own ad-free personalized stations powered by Pandora. Hear ad-free extra channels and enjoy favorite shows with SiriusXM Video on Demand. What you love is on now.
When music meets engineering, that is what sparked Morel's loudspeakers. At Morel, we constantly seek to challenge ordinary speaker design. For over 40 years, Morel's product development has been innovating speakers to perfection. We believe speakers connect to listeners on an emotional level. To overcome acoustic challenges, our unique design process derives inspiration from nature. The lotus flower and the basalt rock are the origin of our low-resonance grills. Hand craftsmanship and attention to detail are at the heart of the production process. Over the years, Morel has inspired people to enjoy music all around the world, literally everywhere. The Morel sound beats in every speaker we make. This is our passion. Morel, unleash the music everywhere.
Hey guys, what's going on? Thanks again for tuning in for another lunchtime learning session, CMA Connected, presented by Sirius XM. I'm your host, Ben Wu. And on today's session, again, TGIF, we save the best for the end of the week to send you guys to the weekend excited and pumped about mobile electronics. Now, I can say I've been doing this for a bit now, and we've done a lot of connected videos and Industry Week and CMA Lives. So I get pretty excited for just about everything 12 volt. But I would be lying to you if I said that I don't get just a little bit more excited when we start talking about some high-end audio pieces. Today, as you can see from the intro, we are talking about a high-end speaker brand, and that is, of course, Morel from Israel and distributed in Canada by Gemsen Distribution. Now, we've had the opportunity to have Dave Singh from Gemsen on with us before to talk about the whole lineup, but there's been some new additions to the offering this season that I know he's going to want to show and get into. And we're going to talk a little bit about the technology and get an update from what's going on from Gemsen and Morel. Maybe a surprise visit at the end to give us a little testimonial as to how these products perform, not only from an install perspective, but also from consumer feedback perspective. So without further ado, I'm going to go on and put on our guest for today, returning once again to CMA Connected, representing Gemsen and Morel in Canada, Mr. David Singh. What's going on, Dave?
Hey, Ben, how you doing? Good to see you again.
It's Friday, man.
Exactly. I don't know about you, but we got snow here today for some
Stop! Don't even. Are you serious?
Yeah, it was snowing a little bit here, so I hope that was the end of it, and there's no more snow for the rest of 2021.
You were just telling me how it was so crazy hot on May long weekend. It was like 30 degrees and all this stuff, and I was like, ooh, I'm on the East Coast and we're only at 17, but I was happy with that. But no snow.
Well, I guess it's karma, right? I was rubbing it in, and then
you see what happens? See what happens?
That's it.
All right. So, Dave, I know we love talking about this, and you and I could literally go on for days and days about high-end car audio because I think it's a passion that we share, and we certainly could dissect it a million different ways. But, today we're going to focus on Morel brand, and, a brand that's been around for a long time, tons of heritage and pedigree in loudspeaker manufacturing on an international level. You guys are the exclusive Canadian distributor. They are serious about high-end car audio, car speaker systems. And I'm hoping that you're going to be able to share with us a little bit of the technology involved and maybe some of the new offerings that are coming down the pipe.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been partners with Morel for I think going close to 10 years. And one of the attractions we had for Morel is their reputation for high-end transducer technology. I mean, we're here to talk about the car audio side of things, but I mean, Morel is much more than that. I mean, we'll talk about some of those other categories that they play in, but I think one of the things that really adds validity to a high-end speaker manufacturer is if you can have success in the home audio arena. There's there's plenty of brands out there, and one of the things that Morel does really, really well is develop and manufacture speakers, not only for their own brand name, but they've got speakers that they're manufacturing for some other manufacturers as well. And their success it definitely complements what they have to offer in the car audio world. So.
Yeah, and I had the opportunity to sit in on some training sessions about it. And what really struck, with me was the fact that they are a speaker manufacturer first, right? And like you said, they provide for the OE market in automobile manufacturing, but they also provide for other home companies, for drivers, for their home speakers. So I think that sets the stage a little bit for what we're going to talk about.
Exactly. So, I have a bit of a presentation, and I apologize. I know we like to chat a bit, but we'll fly through these slides.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Just because my memory is not as sharp as it used to be, and also my memory is not as sharp as it used to be. So
I don't know why you say that, Dave. I mean, people call you every day. You are as sharp as you ever was, but I get it.
I think our brains lately, with so much going on, our brains are full. So I want to make sure that we cover everything.
No, absolutely.
Talk about. So, okay. A little bit about Morel. It was started in 1975 by Mayor Mordecai. They build all of their drivers in-house, which is pretty unique. They target really the high-end car audio market and high-end home audio market, and they really are recognized for their designs and speaker design and manufacturing of transducers. So, some people may not be familiar with the Morel brand, but I mean, it's a brand that exists worldwide. I mean, not only are they in Canada and USA, but huge markets like Russia, Korea, Japan. In fact, those particular markets are the markets where they're buying the super uber high-end Morel products, such as the Supremo and the Elate Carbon Pros and that sort of stuff. So, they have. Those overseas markets have a high appreciation for the hi-fi fidelity products that are out there, right? I'm sure you've done some research there, Ben, and you can see the activity that happens there. The type of money that is being spent on high-end audio overseas is just mind-boggling.
It's like they don't even look at the mid and down. It's like they start at mid to high and up.
Yeah, it almost seems like entry level doesn't even exist.
Doesn't even exist, yeah.
Real quickly, I mean, yes, Morel builds product for automotive, and that's about 60% of their business. But on the hi-fi side, like the home audio side, that's about 20% of their business. And same thing with the OEM. We'll talk a little bit about the OEM thing. But, raw drivers is really the core of their business. Building raw drivers, whether under the Morel umbrella, for home or car, or even the OEM side of things. Speaking about OEM, if you take a look at this roster of very well-known brands, you've got Kef, Totem, Pagani. You're a car guy, Ben. I'm sure you can appreciate Pagani. I mean,
what, the multi-million-dollar ride if you want one? Yeah, of course. It's a little bit out of reach, I'd say, but yeah.
Well, yeah, for most, but I guess if you're in BC, it might be your first car.
No jab at our BC listeners, though. No jab.
No, certainly not. But there's definitely going to be a lot of high-end cars out there. So here's the cool thing about this is, they are manufacturing drivers for all of these fine brands. Magico, that's a very well-known home audio brand using Morel drivers. Dude. Macrum, the list goes on. I mean,
Totem out of Montreal. Totem out of Montreal.
Yeah, and so I mean, that's not saying that every single driver they use is Morel exclusively, but they are utilizing the technology and research that Morel has put into their products, and looking for solutions that only Morel can bring to the table, and they're incorporating it into their finished product. So, it's a pretty cool reflection of how or the position that Morel sits in the grand scheme of things. Definitely not, entry level, I guess you could say. So on their home audio side, they build some beautiful product. They do custom integration. They do your satellite type speakers. But they build some real beautiful home audio products. And the speakers that you'll notice on the left, the black ones, those are called the Fat Lady. And if you've ever seen them in person, unfortunately, this picture doesn't do it any justice. But it's made entirely out of carbon fiber. I mean, that it's not an inexpensive speaker, but this is the reference piece for Morel. And one of the cool things that Morel takes into consideration when they're building their products, especially on the home side, is they take a lot of hints from art. And even looking at the shape of the Fat Lady, it kind of resembles a cello or a double bass. It's not your typical square boxy type of enclosure. This is very exotic materials, and obviously the best of best when it comes to sound. So hopefully, Ben, you'll get an opportunity to hear one of those things, because they are just breathtaking, incredible speakers. So, on the car audio side, yes, we make speakers, coaxials, or what Morel likes to call, in many cases, point source. There's a selection of amplifiers and some really unique products, which we'll get into a little bit later, that are a very different approach to conventional speaker design. So like I was telling you a little bit earlier, Morel, the fit for them is in the high end, high end being, even above premium. They've got, we've got speakers that are $6,000, $5,000 plus. But, luckily for somebody that may just be looking at getting into a simple upgrade, there are speakers that start around the $200, retail mark as well. Yeah. So, oops, sorry about that. So here's the good stuff, really what makes Morel different. As we were saying, there's so many different brands that are out there, and there's some fine brands, but we really do feel that we're a different company, and a lot of that gets into the technology of the speaker. And although it may look pretty and attractive and everything like that, that is not where the meat and potatoes is. The core, the heart of the speaker is all in the technology they use, such as Hexatech aluminum voice coils. And I remember us talking about this on the last session we did about Morel, but this is really important. Yeah, voice coils, when you look at a voice coil former, the windings that are on it are typically just regular copper wire, which is round in shape. And when you stack those round copper wires on top of each other, what you end up getting is all these little gaps in between each of the windings. So what Morel is using in their premium speakers is a Hexatech voice coil. So the copper wire itself is actually shaped like a hexagon. So when you now wind these on top of each other, those little gaps are eliminated, and now you've got a much stronger magnetic field. In fact, there's I believe it's a 20% increase in magnetic field, as a result of using Hexatech. So it makes the speaker more efficient, makes it more reactive to the motor assembly, because when you're listening to music and you want that instant reaction, you need to have a strong motor and a reactive voice coil, and maximizing the voice coil using Hexatech definitely improves the sound quality overall. Another cool feature that we use is down at the very bottom of this picture. On the right side, you'll see like a conventional speaker design where you've got the cone attached to the voice coil and the magnets on the outside of the voice coil. What Morel is using is what's called the EVC, or external voice coil motor design. So when you look at the speaker on the left, the motor is actually inside the speaker. okay, as opposed to being on the outside. So you've got the voice coil, you've got the motor inside the voice coil, and it does a couple of things. One is you've got some magnetic shielding. So when you're dealing with some of the more expensive vehicles that are out there where there's all kinds of computers, sometimes in the kick panels or whatever, we need to have some powerful motor assemblies. So by moving that motor assembly inside the speaker, we can have it magnetically shielded. It also has some other advantages as well, making the speaker a little bit shallower, etc. But it is a very different approach to what conventional speakers are done. And then, this other feature, these are really just the top three that we're talking about, but the car filter. On the back of a Morel driver, when you look at it, you'll see what kind of looks like a mesh. I don't want to call it a grill, but we'll call it what it is. It's really a filter at the end of the day. And what that does is it adds a little bit of back pressure to the speaker, almost tricking it into believing like it's in an enclosure. So that also helps the performance of the driver as well. So those are just kind of three of the technologies that Morel is known for, but you'll find in all of their premium speakers.
If I may, Dave, I think I remember this part, and I think the best, example I can draw from automotive experience is the same thing why they baffle exhaust systems in performance cars with a baffle to increase the back pressure of the exhaust system to actually make more horsepower. And I believe this is a similar type of concept. By controlling the airflow, you mentioned, it's
back
almost
pressure.
like back pressure. It's like having an enclosure. And I think the principle behind the concept is similar.
Exactly. So, I was talking a little bit about the design philosophy, and I kind of jumped the gun, but, this is a better shot of the Fat Lady, once again, entirely made out of, carbon fiber, taking very heavy hints from being art and music, all combined. Look, when you're listening to a pair of speakers and you're immersing yourself in the experience, looking at a pair of square boxes can kind of be, take away from the experience. So when you get to look at, fine art in front of you and the music that's emanating from these artistic pieces, it really does add to the experience.
Let's be honest. Anybody that can afford these or serious about, high fidelity is going to have that in their listening room, not living room, listening room. And it's a showpiece. It's like, what I mean?
Even if you didn't listen to them, they just look cool.
They just look
there.
ridiculous. Like, that's a lot of carbon fiber, bro.
Oh, yeah. And, carbon fiber is not inexpensive.
No, not that quality anyhow.
Here's some other hints that Morel is taking from art and also nature. It's a grill that we use on many of our speakers called the Lotus grill. And it's kind of outside the box. Yes, it looks pretty, but, what it does is this pattern design is better than using conventional mesh. It kind of eliminates some of the horn effects that you can get from using a conventional mesh type of grill. So yes, it does look beautiful, but
even the grill is engineered.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of thought put into it. So, we're all about having the best experience when it comes to music. The slogan that Morel likes to use is unleash the music. They're trying to create an emotional connection, an experience where you can just kind of, close your eyes and feel like you're actually in the presence of the performers that were, created the music from the beginning. So, a little bit on the craftsmanship, for 45 years, they've got a lot of experience in building speakers, but, all of these things are handcrafted. Voice coils are wound in-house, that sort of thing. So they take a lot of pride because that attention to detail definitely makes a huge difference at the end of the day to ensure that you're getting the best speaker possible. Right? The cars that we were talking about, the Pagani in the top corner there. Here's some other supercars that Morel has developed relationships with, and they are the speaker brand of choice that are being used in these vehicles. So, we've got a couple of Paganis there. We've got a Karma, Mazzanti. There's also that Standcraft homemade wooden speedboat, which it costs a fortune. But I mean, these guys that are buying the best of the best are looking for the best of the best when it comes to sound. You know, they're not looking for the least expensive speaker to go in the car. They want something that will complement the performance of the vehicle that they have, and you know, Morel is the speaker brand of choice for these manufacturers. So, you know, that was we went a little deep, but yes, we went quickly. But to give you a background of who Morel was, or is, I should say, and what their philosophy is. So, you know, all about the music, all about high performance, and all about high quality. So, here's some of the cool things that just were released this year. I mentioned that Morel's been around for over 40 years, and this is actually their 45th anniversary. So to commemorate that, Morel has re-engineered the entire car audio speaker lineup. And we'll go through a bunch of the different speakers here so you guys have an understanding of what we have to offer. So, you know, at the very top end of the spectrum, there's the Supremo, and there's the Ultimo titanium subwoofers that kind of complement those. I don't want to call this middle. This is middle for Morel, which, to be honest, would be, you know, in the grand scheme of things, considered high end.
Can I be honest? After diving deeper into the lineup and really digging in, I feel like that reference line could almost be split into two categories.
Yeah, you know, I almost want to say, you know, reference, and it should be called, you know, Uber reference for the next
or something. Because Elate Carbon Pro, I mean, it's like,
yeah, that's it, definitely nowhere near middle of the line. You know, that is high end, and Supremo is, you know, the Uber high end, and then we have our performance products, which is the Tempo Series, Maximo, and the Primo and the MPS amplifiers. So, you know, the top dog that we got is the Supremo. And this is a carbon fiber cone. We use very large voice coils on Morel drivers. In fact, in the case of the Supremo, we've got a 3-inch voice coil. That's massive, especially when you're talking a 6.5-inch driver. You know, you're talking almost 50% of the driver is voice coil. So, you know, a large voice coil also does wonders for heat dissipation as well. But these are sound quality speakers, and what Morel is doing is using an underhand voice coil setup for this. So what that means is, you know, the voice coil windings are not as tall as a regular voice coil. They're much shorter, but that voice coil always stays within the magnetic gap. And by doing so, we're seeing huge performance advantages in terms of sound quality. So, you know, that is something that's really cool and unique to the Supremo. The tweeter there, unfortunately, you don't get to see the back of it, but that's the Morel Supremo Piccolo. And that's a tweeter that in this industry is, you know, considered one of the best tweeters that has been ever produced. It's a large tweeter. It's got a big cavity on the back. It's not one of those things that you would normally put in a pair of pillars in your car. You know, some custom fabrication is going to be involved, but let's be honest, with a speaker system like this, when you're buying something of this level, you're going to get into some custom fabrication to make sure that, you know, the positioning of the speaker and everything like that is the best possible. So, you know, before we get into the Elate Carbon Pros, yeah, I was talking about the 45th anniversary, but I didn't get into this whole new look that they also are incorporating into their packaging. We'll get into that in a second. Let's talk about the Carbon Pro, and I'll show you the packages in a second. So this one is, to me, the most exciting thing that I've seen from Morel.
Dude, so this is we're talking about this again, and now that I've had a chance to really absorb it, those are, like, I mean, expert level on the sexy. Everything about this is sexy. The way it's set up, the cones, the big dust cat, like, it just looks like it performs. And when I said earlier, my comment is, you know, okay, obviously the Supremo are, like, you know, top of the pyramid. But man, these are just like one step down. Like, literally, there's not that many steps before you get to this, I feel.
You know, what we found that's very interesting is this is where a lot of the activity for Morel is happening right now. You know, regardless of the price point, we just can't keep Elate Carbons and Elate Carbon Pros in stock. It's insanity. You would think that money was, kind of going to play a factor, but people have no problem spending the money on this level of product. And, part of it is reputation, that, they know that they're going to get a high performance speaker at the end of the day. And, they're not worried that spending a few $1,000s is going to be a disappointment. These things are going to blow their expectations. Every dealer that I've had that have put these in have commented, oh my gosh, like I mean the stuff that they had before.
It is getting, I'm not gonna lie, it is getting a lot of rave reviews from some really high level people within the industry that have, been there, tried that, tested stuff, competed with stuff. It is causing a ruckus right now, these Elate carbons. I mean, if you're a dealer and you're thinking about Morel, or you already are a Morel dealer, dude, like, I don't know how you got to squeeze Dave's arm, but you need to get you some of these.
I appreciate that. This is kind of the new Elate Carbon and the Carbon Pro. They're very similar. I'll tell you what the difference is in a second. But, they're baby brothers to the Supremo, more so with the Carbon Pro. So, the previous Elates didn't have carbon fiber cones. But, what we're doing is taking some of the technology from the Supremo, bringing it into the Elate Carbon. So you've got, a one-piece carbon fiber cone. We're using the titanium voice coil formers. We're using Hexatech voice coil windings, car filters, etc. But, I mean, this is all about sound quality. They've got better power handling. Or more power handling than the Supremo. Not that the Supremo can't handle a lot of power, but these speakers are designed to be driven really hard.
Like throw as much as you can at it, basically, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Where the Supremo is a fidelity speaker and the underhand voice coil, there is a little bit of a drawback to get that fidelity and the underhand voice coil. There's a little bit of a drawback of a little less power handling, where this is using a different design and we've got a lot more power handling capability. One of the things that we get a lot of compliments on is those crossovers. And
first of all, they look so unique, right? There's no crossover on the planet that looks like that. And if I'm not mistaken, these sets are available in both with or without them. So you can run them active without a crossover or order it with the crossover. Is that correct?
Correct. To be honest, in Canada, what we are doing is just bringing in what we call the active systems. And those are the only ones that we stock, because a speaker of this level nowadays, guys are using DSP configurations. I mean, passive crossovers are cool and handy, but if you want the best performance out of these speakers, you're going to go, fully active.
Full active for sure. Yeah.
So, the difference between the Carbon and the Carbon Pro is all of the drivers are the same except for the tweeter. And the tweeter on the Carbon Pro is a larger tweeter. It's similar to that of the Piccolo. And
what diameter is that, Dave?
The tweeter itself. Well, the tweeter is still a 1-inch, a 1.1 inch tweeter, but the actual housing itself is about 2.5 inches,
okay.
Right? So it is a larger tweeter. It's definitely not one of your, just simple
Compact
OEM factory replacements or sort of thing, right? So maybe what we can do is, I think I can show you a picture or show you live what one of the 6.5-inch drivers looks like, and then I can switch it over to this tweeter if you want to do that real quick.
We could. I think you're gonna have to reset that camera though, Dave.
Oh, okay. So we'll get that set up in a second.
Yeah, sure.
Here's a picture of the tweeter in the meantime here.
Dude, that looks like a home tweeter. Right?
Yeah, it is. And it does look like a home tweeter. The trim ring or the mounting ring is obviously much smaller, for the car audio environment. But essentially, if you did make that trim ring much larger, you'd have a what looks exactly like a home audio tweeter. If you look at some of the specs there, I mean, the frequency range is 1,400, 25,000. But the power handling on this thing is 220 watts RMS. It is a deeper tweeter. It's like almost 1 3/4 of an inch. So once again, custom fabrication is going to be involved, but it's worth the effort at the end of the day. I'm going to see if I can get that camera up in a second, but the other tweeter that was not in the Carbon Pro, that's the smaller tweeter. This is called the MT450. That's a tweeter that is going to be easier to adapt into factory locations. So if you want the best of the best, you go with the Carbon Pro. If you don't want to get into the custom fabrication and or as much custom fabrication, like building custom pillars or anything like that, or some sort of mount for the tweeters, then definitely stick with the regular Elate Carbon with the conventional tweeter, the MT450. So you can see like the depth is only like 1/2 inch as opposed to 1 3/4 on the other one.
A lot less power handling.
This is true as well. That's another big difference, 220 versus 130 watts. But, these things can play up to 25K. Not that we can hear that, but
yeah,
the fact...
I know I can't. I don't even know if I can get up to like 10,000. But anyways, the specs are there, yeah, for sure.
On the mid-range, this is a really cool driver as well. It's a brand new driver.
Oof.
It's a 3.5. I mean, this picture doesn't do any justice. But
would you recommend that for like a center speaker?
It could be used as a center speaker, because if you look at the frequency response, it can play all the way down to 40 hertz. So, but this is part of the 3-way package that you would get in either the Carbon or the Carbon Pro. And previously, Morel used to use a dome mid-range. So it looked like a tweeter. It was a 2-inch dome tweeter, dome mid-range, I should say. But there was a lot of requests to get something that had more dispersion.
Or punch too, I'm sure.
Yeah. So with the new MM3 mid-range, we're able to get that type of wider dispersion capability, and going to a conventional driver design that is, not overly bulky, but definitely not as small as a dome mid-range.
This is really speaking to those builders that have those customers for those higher end Euro cars that want to build like those crazy 3-way active systems, don't have no rear fill to deal with. You know what I mean? Maybe one sub, but like it's a la carte almost, right? I mean, 3-way with options for tweeter, that 3.5-inch mid-range there, and the other one, is it up to 6.5?
Actually,
mid base.
We the Elate Carbon Pros and the Elate Carbons, we make up to a 9-inch. So we have a
9.
Yeah, so we have a 903, a 603 3-way package, and a 902 and a 602, and So I mean, if you're looking for serious mid bass, get that 9-inch. I mean,
if you can fit it, yep.
Dude, I am really surprised by the amount of people that have no problem cutting up their cars because they just want to maximize the amount of.
Well, if you had a 6x9 hole, you're halfway there. That's the way I look at it.
Exactly. And exactly what you were asking, what sizes we have. So there's a 5 1/4, 6.5. We call it a 9-inch. It's actually 8 3/4. But once again, incredible sounding speakers. The biggest compliment I had from a dealer was, when he put it in, he says, I cannot believe the amount of mid bass. I can almost get away with not using a sub.
Without a sub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after Supremo and then Elate Carbon Pro and Elate Carbon, there's a series called the Hybrid and the Hybrid Integra. And the Hybrid is a component system. It's not using a carbon fiber cone. We're using a conventional cone material, but we have basically broken the speakers up into 2 different segments. We have a component speaker system, and we have what is called a point source. Okay, so this one is the components speaker system, where we have a 5 1/4 and a 6.5. It's used as a 1.1-inch tweeter. You do have the option to get a 3-way package where there's this conventional sorry, I apologize. I lost my train of thought. So the 3-way package is actually using the dome mid-range, and it's using the conventional tweeter. On the point source, this is what I was fumbling over. On the point source, this is a little different. There's not a 3-way package on the point source, but what we do use is point source technology. So while a lot of people may call this a coaxial what this is a tweeter that's recessed into the inside of the driver. So it's basically on the same plane that the cone of the mid base is. And what that does is it eliminates any phase issues you would normally get by having the tweeter on a little pole, like most coaxials are done, right?
Can I ask a question, Dave?
Yeah.
I noticed with the hybrid Integra, I always knew this lineup as kind of the visually iconic lineup with the traditional Morel grill. Have they now changed that traditional grill to this grill now?
So I think you might be talking about the octopus grill, which was the one with the really big holes in it.
Yes.
And that was something that was, really well known for Morel for quite some time. But that is something that we phased out, and we've gone for something.
Cool. There it is, right there. I just aged myself.
Well, actually, we had it up until last year, so it wasn't
okay. There you go. Yeah, I knew that.
So it was a cool grill. It was definitely that Morel signature. When people saw that grill, they recognized it as being Morel driver. But
there were a lot of SQ cars at Alaska running those grills. That's why I recognized them.
But for this year, we wanted something very high-end looking, to reflect the just the beautiful details that the speakers have to offer. And we've gone now to the mesh grills, the Lotus type of grills, for all of their speakers. So, in these hybrids and hybrid Integras, we've got a variety of different sizes, 5 1/4, 6 1/2. These are great sounding speakers, definitely at a price level that's lower than the Elate Carbons and the Elate Carbon Pros. But an excellent option when you need to get into a coaxial, because there are no coaxials in the Elate Carbon Pros or the Supremos.
Okay.
The tweeter that we're using on the component system, very similar to that of some of the other Morel tweeters. It's only 1/2 inch. It fits well in factory applications. This is the dome mid-range that I was talking about that Morel used to use in all of their three-way setups. Now, as I mentioned, the Carbon and the Carbon Pros have got a conventional style speaker, but on the hybrid, we're using the dome mid-range, which is still an excellent speaker, but it saves you on some money from that very esoteric MM3 that we're using in the next series up. The beauty of the speaker, though, is it'll fit in a lot of very tight applications. I've seen some guys where they've decided to build little pods right up on their dash, and put a tweeter and a dome mid-range right beside each other. And because the speaker is so shallow, it's only like 0.8 inches deep, you don't have to take up a lot of space. There are guys that are overseas that are machining pods that are almost dome-shaped, or I guess I should say spherical shape, so they make one for the dome mid-range, and then you make one for the tweeter, and people will just kind of screw them onto their pillars. I don't know if that's necessarily the safest thing, but people have done it in competition, and because of the really shallow nature of the speaker, it lends itself into those applications where they're not going to be really big and bulky. And then the mid-bass drivers are also available in a 4 inch, a 5 1/4, and a 6 1/2 inch driver. Going into the point source drivers, we make a 4 inch, a 5 1/4, and a 6 1/2. And that 4 inch is particularly interesting because the tabs are removable, making it easy to fit and integrate into a lot of European vehicles, which sometimes can be a little bit tricky. A lot of guys are looking for a high performance 4 inch speaker, and this Integra 4 inch does a very, very good job.
Mercedes, BMW.
100. That's it. This is the speaker, and I wish I had a sample with me today, but because it's been selling so well, and it sounds like a typical sales guy, but this is the God's honest truth. We cannot keep enough of these things in stock, and this is the Virtus Nano Carbon and the Nano Carbon Integra.
So it's before you say, right away from the visual, you'll recognize that there's something very unique and different about this speaker. I had the opportunity, of course, you explained this to me. I'm going to say I am still in disbelief until I get a chance to hear it. And I don't blame me for that, Dave. It's just that my eyes are seeing something and you're telling me something else.
Well, it'd be nice if we had somebody that could actually, besides a sales guy, that could maybe shed some light on it. Maybe one day you'll have an opportunity to talk to somebody that's had a chance to play with
Maybe I will. Maybe I'll call you out on that.
Well, we'll see what happens. Don't take my word for it. But on these particular speakers, man, first time I saw these things, I mean, they almost look like pancakes. They are ridiculously
No, they do
shallow.
look like pancakes, let's be honest. Or a Frisbee.
Or a Frisbee, that's right. The mounting depth on them alone is 0.7 inches.
That's ridiculous.
So you could take like a piece of 3/4 inch MDF, for example, cut a hole, and you're good to go.
Like the adapter bracket is enough.
Yeah. You'd have actually extra space left behind the driver at the end of the day. But this is a mid-bass driver. It's a 6.5 inch. So you expect some sort of mid-bass. Yes, you can build shallow speakers. There's all kinds of like really thin speakers that are out there that you'll find inside your laptop or your iPhone or something like that. But in a car, you want some,
especially like hot rod applications where there's like no depth in the panels whatsoever.
Well, and how open are hot rod guys to cutting up their cars?
Oh, they love that, right? Oh, original Detroit steel. You want to put it? No.
Yeah. So, and this is doing really well in that particular market. Where guys just do not want anybody hacking into their doors. They might have an existing location that just may not be big enough, or whatever it is. But the beauty of these particular speakers is you don't have to hack up a door. You can put them in very shallow applications, and the bass response is remarkable. I mean, when I first saw them at CES, I said, wow, that's cool, but there's no way there's any type of bass. You're not going to get any type of performance. And they at CES, Morel had them in a set of enclosures set up like a home audio configuration.
Oh.
And I remember hunting around that room and looking behind the curtains and everything like that, looking for a little subwoofer or something like that, because I just couldn't believe the amount of bass.
What about when you were watching it play, the X-Max? Like, did you see it come out a lot, or was it very subtle?
They travel. I mean, they're not going to travel as much as a conventional driver, because it has that physical limitations, but they travel enough that you're going to get really decent bass, and if the other option is, hack up my door and throw another,
or having something really stick out or intrude into the interior, you know what I mean? From the
or have to stick with a really small speaker, in the middle of the dash because that's what the factory came with or whatever. Like you don't have to compromise. You can get high fidelity sound with these particular speakers. So these are doing really well. And Ben, you mentioned some stuff coming down the pipe. What's new? Well, the 6.5 inch was an amazing feat, but we're actually going to be coming out with a 4 inch later on. So
4 inch Virtus,
a 4 inch Virtus. So if the 6.5 is a little bit too big for your application, there's going to be a 4 inch version. Now, if one thing that I didn't think they'd be able to do is take that speaker as shallow as it was, and then drop a tweeter in the middle of it. Okay, and turn it into what's called a coaxial, or the proper terminology that Morel uses in this application is a point source. So they've taken that Virtus Nano, thrown a tweeter in the middle of it, which is now called the Virtus Nano Integra, or actually Virtus Nano Carbon Integra. So you've got a coaxial speaker now where you don't have to worry about mounting a tweeter. You've got exceptional off-axis response. This is just a engineering feat.
This is a high-end solution piece.
Absolutely, and with very little compromise.
Dave, our time is going pretty quick. Oh wait, is there many more slides left just for timing purposes?
The last slide we'll just look at is really on this carbon.
Okay, perfect.
A side profile. that was the mid bass a little bit earlier there. Sorry, there wasn't a better picture. I wish there was a picture of the back. And then there's the dome mid range that you can get in the tweeter as well. So, I mean, there is a lot of very cool applications you can put these Virtus Nanos and Integras into. I challenge anybody to find a spot where they can't fit these things into. They just work phenomenally. And every response, every bit of feedback I've ever heard is, wow, I can't believe it. These things sound incredible.
You've been throwing a lot of sales lines at me there today, Dave. We've sold out. People, we can't keep them in stock. All the feedback we've had has been nothing but positive. So, as you know, we've been trying to incorporate a little bit of our dealer network into our connected shows, because you know what? It's great to get the product information out there, but I, for one, would love to hear feedback from the shops. You know what I mean? Like, these are the guys selling it. These are the guys getting the feedback from the customers. These guys are the ones integrating and fabricating and putting them and making them work in the real world. So, as you've seen from the description of this show, we decided to scour and go through your list of many dealers across Canada that hold Morel. And we've decided to select one today to get his input. And he's no stranger to the CMA community because he's quite vocal, and he's literally on every single 12-volt Sales Pro call every time. I don't know how he finds the time to do that all the time, but every time I'm on, he's already on. More than you, Dave. I think he's on there more than you and I combined.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
But anyhow, we're going to bring him on all the way from Sudbury. Of course, it's Sudbury Car Audio's Mr. Conrad Leduc. What's going on, Conrad?
Hey, Ben. Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Man,
hey,
welcome to CMA Connected. This is your first time on CMA, is it not?
First time.
Oh, there's a first time for everything.
Can only get better from here.
Oh, it can definitely only get better. So, Dave, this is the part where I'm going to talk to Conrad. I don't want you sliding him notes or anything of that nature. No winks or signs or anything like that. Obviously, Conrad, you're pretty vocal about the fact that you're a Morel dealer. And how long have you? But before we talk about Morel, actually, talk to us. Here's your shines. Tell us about Sudbury Car Audio. I know we've done a feature on you on our website before, but where are you located? How long have you been in business? What's the deal?
Sudbury Car Audio is in a small community in Sudbury called Valcarin, and we're a one-man shop. And I have a very, very high expectation for audio. In the last 7 years of doing this full-time, I've been installing a lot longer, of course, I've just risen the bar multiple times for audio expectations. If you've seen any one of our installs in the last 3-4 years, the bar has been risen over and over and over, and we're only going to get better. We're not stopping. We train every day. Like you said, we're on those calls, and those calls are simply to get better and to better ourselves, better the shop, and eventually expand the shop and teach customers what good and great audio is, as some of the speakers we're talking about today.
I find that so interesting for two things. Number one, you're not exactly in a giant metropolis like a Toronto or Montreal, Vancouver, and you're getting great traction, right? You're building up your rapport and also your business in an area like Sudbury. But also, yeah, you're on the all the calls. You're on ours. You're always watching our stuff and learning. So I love it when dealers say that, because that's why we do what we do. It's just to get you guys the right information so you stay on top of your game all the time. All right. Having said that, one-man operation, you've been a Morel dealer for how long?
Dave introduced me to Morel about 6 years ago. And I remember that conversation and I went, what? What's this? Never heard of it.
Oh, you never even heard of the brand. Oh. Okay.
And Dave said, I promise you got to try this. And he sent me some samples and the world changed. And we really took a couple years to get the name going as a household name. But when you have people come in that are first-time car audio buyers saying, hey, I heard about this Morel brand. It's in my friend's car, and it sounds unreal. That's right there. We did it. We made it known, like the other normal everyday brands that we're used to hearing. But it is no longer a high-end premium brand. I mean, it's accessible anywhere in the world, and it's unreal. As we say, it's fantabulous.
So fantastic. So let's break this down a little bit. Dave talked to us a lot about how it is a wide range from a pricing standpoint, for a consumer. You can get in at $200 something, or I didn't even ask you, what is retail on Supremo? I need to know. If you don't have to tell me now, you want to look that up. I'm sure it's a couple $1,000s. But having said that, customer comes to you. I see you have a Morel display behind you. What have been some of the key selling points that have helped you close deals on Morel product with your customers?
Well, I honestly will stand people here and we'll do a demo on the Morel board. And apart from whether someone wants to demo top down or bottom up, I love demoing the entry level Morel Maximos. We'll demo a set of components off a Morel amp, and right away people say, whoa, I can't afford that. And then you burst their bubble and you say, sir, that's our entry level. And they go, oh my God. Like for a $320 retail speaker, they're blown away. Like they don't believe it's that less. I don't want to say cheap because it's like, we don't use the word, but the low cost on an entry level pair of Morels is unreal. And for what they produce, we do those in almost every vehicle.
So you're saying what model is that? That's the Maximo two-way?
The new Maximos, yes. And like I said, you can't say enough about. I tell people entry level, don't let that scare you. And I play them, and they go, "Whoa!" They're shocked. And then we go
on another session, Ben. We'll have to spend some time on the entry level product. You know, we talked about all the Israel-based stuff, but the Tempos and the Maximos that Conrad.
It's bread and butter, right? As you can see here, we have a retail shop here. This is the customer comes in. He's starting right there at Maximo. Boom, out of the gate. You know, it's $300 something. Yeah, that's where you need to start, right? And a lot of that is confidence when it comes to retail, right? What's the feedback that your customer gets once they hear it in the board and then you've installed it? Now, you know, the customer's here and you turn on their systems all tuned. What is the feedback been with the speakers over time now that you've been doing it for a while?
It's always positive. There's only ever been positive reviews from this. There's no one that has ever said, you know, not like. You can't say enough about these speakers. They're unreal. The brand itself, I just turn on songs and I step back. I don't have to sell them on anything. I don't have to tell them about the Hexatech voice code, the car. We do sometimes when they're getting into. I brought my MM3s, by the way.
Oh, there you go.
I removed it from my truck. Right.
Okay, wait, hold on. We're going to show that. You want to show this? There you go.
Yeah, we can get into these details of this speaker, which is just a beautiful, gorgeous speaker. But we don't have to. We just let the speaker play and people judge for themselves. And right away, they fall in love with music again, which is the point of what we're here to do.
So before I talk to you about the technical side, you know, I just want to run one scenario by you. I'm kind of not really a first-time car audio. I'm kind of looking, you know, I'm not a kid. You know what I mean? I've been around. I want something pretty good for my car. I come in with already these preconceived notions of all these other brands and stuff. And you're telling me Morel, which I was maybe not totally on that, you know, on that track. What kind of dialogue are you telling them? You know, because obviously you have other brands in the store, right?
Yeah.
So how do you position it?
Well, we get into the Morel history and why they build speakers and how they build speakers. When someone does it for the love of audio, it drives them to be passionate about what they do. And I mean, when I met Morel, I was nowhere near new into retail either. And we always hear about companies that if your company only does one thing, you're not going to succeed. And they did it. For 40 years, they did just speakers and just drivers. Only recently have they started building amps. And there was so much passion in their product. Like I said, apart from letting them speak for themselves by playing a demo, the technology in these speakers by being handmade in Israel and the stuff that they put patents on that no one else can produce in the world, that's what makes their speakers just top notch.
Do you like what you're hearing, Dave?
Absolutely. Who wouldn't? You know?
Okay, but you know what? No, sorry. Go ahead. What about from an install standpoint? You know, hardware, all that type of stuff.
Install is like anything else. I mean, Morel does provide the screws and the terminals to put stuff in a full package. There's instances where we use our own stuff as well. I mean, we make our own brackets, and I'm just a guy that likes to use Robertson screws versus Phillips screws. That's me. Mm-hmm. But either way, they always go in. We always use the hashtag eight holes, 8 screws. Mm-hmm. We don't put 4. You know, it's not meant for that. But no, we installation wise, we have zero issue with installation. The amps were built with the installer in mind too. Of all the terminals on the bottom and all angled on a 45, we can install in most vehicles in that amp. You can barely see any wires coming out the bottom. It just looks really, really well when we do put them in, for sure.
What about efficiency? Like, do you need to throw a lot of power at it? Do you recommend that to customers, or the more entry level ones can get away with like maybe 50 watt, you know, average?
We've ran a lot of speakers, and when we get into entry level, we'll run them off radio. So even a 21 watt RMS or 20 watt radio.
Really?
100%.
A $300 something set of speakers. You guys say you're comfortable running that off radio?
$320 set of components. We have run them off decks, no problem. It's always better, of course, when you run an amplifier.
Of course.
But we also won't show anyone Morel ultra tempos and above if they're going to run off a radio. It's just not fair to the client. But at that point, we've had people even buy them off a deck and then install an amplifier later because they knew they were going to. So, yes, deck power can definitely run the entry level. They're very, very efficient and they work very well.
Now, no pressure. I know Dave is there, but pretend he's not sitting there for a second. What critique would you have from a shop perspective if there's anything that they could maybe work or improve? And this is constructive criticism. I like to hear from the shop floor.
Yeah, 100%. No, there's not much we can say about the driver side because they've been doing it for so long. The only thing I could say feedback wise is the bass knob for the amplifier has got to go. It has got to be refreshed. It's a beautiful, it's a great product to have a bass knob on any monoblock amplifier, but it looks like the one that comes free on the internet. I hate to say that. I love Morel. We talk to Morel lots. But that bass knob, there's just other companies that make them so much nicer.
And the funny thing is about knobs is that's actually where the customer touches their system.
Yep.
The one
and
point of
there's
contact,
some that can actually be hidden behind the dash and not a big old box under the dash. Right?
What about the speakers though? Since we are kind of focusing on the speakers today.
I can't say anything. These are like I have a set of piccolos myself with a set of MM3s and
Lucky
a set of Elate Carbon. Yes, I know. I run the big boy stuff. But like Dave was saying, with the fat ladies, they're a work of art. They're an absolute work of art. If I display this in a glass cabinet, people are just going, "Whoa, what's that?" And it's like they go, "Oh, these are $5,000." Oh my God, put it back. They don't even want to touch it.
Do you often find yourself actually taking and putting it into customers' hands?
Yeah, of course. Why not? 100%. Up until last week, we had a pair of the Carbon Nanos, your pancake, as you put it. I call them the UFO.
I was going to that. That was going to close with this.
We have a set waiting for our board. Of course, they're on back order because we can't get them enough, and they're selling out like crazy.
Oh God! Did you guys time that or what?
No. It's
was there a virtual like e-transfer that just went on there?
I sent them $20.
I'm just kidding.
I got it. But no, we recently used a set in a Mercedes, which only had 1.5 inch mounting depth of the speaker. There was a window. There's nothing more you can do. We're not cutting the panel of a Benz. And when I showed the client those speakers, he didn't even think twice. He just said, "Done. Put them in. They're unreal."
Wow.
We didn't even get to cost yet. They
Didn't care. You found a solution.
There was a solution.
There's a solution.
As well as we just had a Volkswagen, I think an older Cabriolet, which had a under 1.5 inch mounting depth, and I still need more speakers for him. He hasn't had his 2 sets yet. He needs 2 sets, and we only had 1 for him. So they're unreal.
And the sound, is there actually a little punchiness to it?
100%. We've done them. I mean, in the Cabriolet, they're going off an amplifier with no sub. It's a convertible, so he'll have enough for sure.
Open air and still has a little bit of.
Guaranteed him that.
Dave, I'm gonna. Oh, sorry, you're right.
Yeah.
Any comments you have for Conrad before we let him go?
Well, hopefully you got my e-transfer. I appreciate your. Well, I appreciate the kind words, and I know Morel does too. I think every sales guy will always say that their stuff is great, but it's great to hear comments and experience and feedback from dealers. If the only problem we have is the volume knob being in a little metal box,
I think you can handle that.
Reliability and performance and all that other type of stuff is at the forefront, and as long as there's no issues with that, we're pretty happy. But we appreciate everything that Conrad has been doing. He's been an excellent example of a dealer that invests himself, invests the time, invests what he needs to do to position himself above the rest, right? I mean, you mentioned he was on all these different chat rooms that we're on.
He's always there. Conrad's going to be 100%.
Yeah, and he's getting the rewards for it now. So thank you for everything that you do, Conrad. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it, and thanks for taking a chance on a brand that you weren't familiar with back in the day when we first got started. So
no stress, Conrad. Right? You got your peeps in the back.
The best thing we ever did. It really was. Thanks for having me, guys.
Conrad's got a whole team in the back installing. That's why he's in no rush to get off the screen. Right?
And thank you for your time, Conrad. Appreciate it.
Anytime, guys. Anytime.
Hey, Conrad, first of all, before I let you go,
sure.
Definitely want to give you props on behalf of CMA for providing like so much content that we get to share. So keep that coming. We always share your stuff. One Man Show, Conrad Leduc, Morel Dealer, and check it out, Sudbury Car Audio. Thanks so much, Conrad.
See you guys.
Thanks,
Take care. Yeah, not bad. I love this little retail session because it kind of gives a different perspective. You know what I mean? Because I think that's what we need to also hear is how does the features and the engineering and the design translate into the real world sales, and that I think is information that's important for all dealers to hear.
Well, Conrad definitely has had a lot of experience over the last 6 years, and he'll be able to tell you if there's been anything bad. Not profitability, reliability, all those important things that really add up to the grand scheme of things to make a brand successful at any store level.
And I will say, Gemsen has quite the collective of premium brands that perform and have been around for a long time. And every time we come on, we get such great support from your vendors as well. So shout out to them, and shout out to you guys, man. Keep up the good work. As you can see, vendors seem to be happy, and that is the name of the game.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Ben, for having us.
Take care, Dave. So that was it. Morel with Gemsen and Dave Singh. And we had our special guest there, Conrad Leduc from Sudbury Car Audio. I really like this session. We're going to keep on inviting, different retailers. We're going to try to reach out. If you're a retailer, you want to be on a Connected, let us know. Hit us up, Facebook, Instagram, email us, info@canadianmobileaudio.com. I do want to take a second here just to throw up the digits one more time. If you're looking at maybe, ordering a pair of Morels or getting into being a Morel dealer in Canada, there's the information. Contact Gemsen. You can check out their website where you can find their email, or go ahead and give them a phone call. Somebody will there to pick you up and support you on that. So we covered Morel. If you're a retailer, this is something new. We're definitely going to be integrating into all our Connecteds. We'd love to hear your feedback. Want to get you on. Want to learn about your shop. Want to hear your feedback about these great brands and these products that we are featuring on all our shows. On that note, it's the weekend. Hopefully everybody has a great one. Summer is just around the corner. Everything's in full swing. I bid you a fantastic weekend. Thanks for tuning in today to yet another CMA Connected presented by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu. Until next time, we connect.